Hello. Hello? Hello. Yes, I am online. It says here I'm online at 5,298 kilobytes per second, so it's not a huge amount, but it's good enough for what I'm doing, I think. Today, with the time I've got, I'm going to work on the radio in this new gap that's formed due to my jigging around of the drawing in general, and how I've resized certain bits, so there's now a bit of a space here. So I'm going to draw. I'm just actually starting to kind of rough out the size and frame of it, like a little radio, portable radio thing, based kind of on one that my grandmother used to have, from memory. Yeah, kind of fits in the same timeline as the computer a little bit. So I'll do that, and then there's like a few other things which I could do if I've got time. Or maybe before I really crack on with this, I will just zoom out to kind of show you how the whole drawing looks at the moment. If I hit Shift M, there you go. So, what's left to do? What's left to do is I want to do kind of a fire alarm, kind of old schoolish fire alarm thing here. I'm kind of thinking about combining the design of like a fire alarm / sprinkler, those kind of ones that you'd see in the 80s films. They have like a very specific look to them. And then maybe here I've got these lights here, right? These sort of hanging strip lights, but I was thinking, as often in these sorts of studio setups, there's like usually quite an array of lights. So I was thinking along this sort of central aisle of just having basic strip lights that are attached straight to the ceiling. And then maybe like, I don't know, some, what do they call it? That kind of metal tubing that houses electricals when they're not inside the wall cavity or the ceiling cavity but actually sort of exposed, that kind of thing. So that needs to get done. Some details on the door here needs to get done. And then this is kind of a bit of an empty space, but I mean, I guess I could maybe do some really subtle shapes there, but nothing too busy. But yeah, right now I want to do this radio, so I'm just working out how the box for it should be, so that the perspective on it is kind of working. Hope everybody's Friday is going alright. I had a meeting this morning, so keep your fingers crossed about that. Hopefully it'll go according to plan. I can't say too much, fortunately. Yeah, just put a mix on. Hope that's okay. We've got a radio in our kitchen which I gutted a while ago, a long time ago actually now, and I replaced the cassette mechanism with a small digital display, like a little OLED display, and the internals I replaced with a Raspberry Pi, and it runs a music player front end, which is actually connected to my Jellyfin server, my music server, my local music server, and it still uses like the original speakers and volume knob and all that sort of thing, but it is like a 90s Sony radio, portable radio, which is not what I'm going for here. With this one I'm going more for that boxier 80s style. And like I said at the beginning of the stream, I have like a particular memory of something like this that my grandmother had. Had like a particularly large radio, well, dial on the side for sure, but also it had like a particularly large radio, like analog, what do you call it, display sort of thing, where you know, as you turned the dial for the tuning in of the radio stations, it would like move this needle across the spectrum. I obviously need to brush up on my radio terminology. You know, I remember it being boxier than this, the one that my grandmother had, so maybe if I actually, first of all, this needs to be more like this, but also I think oh, sorry, my phone's vibrating. Okay, what I'm going to do is just do that. There we go. I put my phone on silent. I'm not expecting any calls today. It's Friday afternoon, so I can just put that phone on silent. Yeah, that's better there, but what I'm also going to do is make it a little shorter. Well, narrower, I suppose. So, how much narrower? Yeah, about that, I think. I'm just trying to decide though whether I like it kind of being hidden, partially hidden by the computer, to give it that kind of messy working space feel. So actually maybe rather than have it chopped on that side, I'll chop it this side. There we go. Yeah, I think that's roughly what my recollection of the proportions of it were like. I don't even remember what make this radio was that my grandmother had. It was definitely a Western brand. She lived in southern Poland, so she had quite a lot of techie bits that were, Eastern German, or don't know what else they could have been. Eastern German, I suppose maybe some of it might even have been Soviet made, but she also had, as this would have been the early 90s, mid to late 90s, early to mid to late 90s, she would have, covering all the 90s, she also had, like a Western TV and a Western radio. Yeah, was it Japanese? I was probably Japanese. It was more like her white goods, I remember. At least in the 90s, not so much in the 2000s, but certainly in the 90s. A lot of her white goods, like her fridge and her washing machine, were not brands you'd come across in the West. Because I remember attempting to read the Cyrillic on, she had like I guess it would have been a very, very primitive tumble dryer, except it didn't have a drying function so much as it was just the spinning bit. So you'd put your wet clothes in there after they'd finished up in the washing machine, or if you'd hand washed it, I guess, and it was just the spinning thing. It would spin really quickly, and it was like an upright one. It was quite odd. So as it span, it wouldn't spin like this, it would spin like this. Slightly dangerous, but there you go. She had it for ages. She had it in her bathroom, I remember. So half of it was written in Polish, and then the other half of it was in, I guess Russian, Cyrillic. Is that looking right? Zoom out. I think that's kind of the right perspective. I think maybe the back needs to be a bit more. Okay, so trying to work out what line width this computer I've done here is. A little bit of YMO in the mix now. Apologies to YouTube watchers. Which album is this? This is the first album. First YMO album. Which track is this though? Or Or is it actually the second one? Is this Solid State Survivor? I always get the tracks mixed up from the first YMO, eponymous YMO album versus the Solid State Survivor album. Oh, is this actually Tong Poo? It's the name of the track. I think this is the first album. Let's see. Yeah, I think that looks about right. I think, well, actually, you know what it might be? It might just be just a little bit more of a sharper angle here. I say sharper, I mean more acute. 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 Oh my god, that's so acute. What is the etymology of the word cute? Growing up, it was always associated as being quite an Americanism, which obviously at this point is laughable, because I think people say the word cute in the UK all the time. But I remember my primary school teachers, so early 90s, saying, "Don't use that term, that's an Americanism. Why don't you say..." Oh dear, I see, look, I use the word cute so often I can't actually even think of a synonym, a British, quote-unquote British synonym. Cute. It's such a, like, particular word, isn't it? Cuddly? No. Cuddly is not the word. Cute. Anybody got any suggestions? What would be a... You know, put yourself in this mindset. It's the 90s, early 90s. And the word cute in the... at least in the bit of the UK I grew up in, was considered by that generation, probably, you know, people in their 60s, 50s and 60s, as being a terrible Americanism. What would the word be that you would use instead for that description? Cute. Oh, that's so cute. Would we have said nice? No, that doesn't really capture it either. Oh, that's so nice. Honestly, I can't think of a synonym for cute. Adorable? Possibly adorable. Adorable. Very adorable. Adorable. Honestly, adorable sounds like an Americanism to me too, and in this period of time. But I suppose that's because I'm just thinking of the when people would say that's adorbs. Adorable. Maybe British people just didn't find anything cute or adorable at that point in time. Everything was just rubbish. Cute. It's not cute, it's rubbish. Oh, certainly my attitude sometimes as a, you know, self-conscious kid. Wouldn't catch me using the word cute unironically. Okay, I think I've now pretty much... let me see. Hold on. If that is that and that is that. See, I just want to make sure that I'm drawing all these verticals in alignment with everything else around them. I think I have done. Yeah, perfect. Okay, cool. I mean, obviously you won't see this bit of the corner of the radio because it's behind the computer, but I'm drawing it there for good practice. Right. Just double checking that seems to sit well with everything else. I think so. I wonder if this bit here needs to be also a little flatter, but then if I look at the computer, no, I think that's fine. You know, a lot of this is down to just if it seems to sit well with everything else, you know? No hard and fast rules. Wait, no, it's all hard and fast rules. What am I talking about? Oh, well, I'm probably speaking far too soon about this, but if the meeting I had today early in the morning goes well, I might have a little less time, unfortunately, to stream. So, you know, them's the breaks. Earning money, but at the same time not being able to stream so often. Yeah, I will still try to stream at least once a week, always. That's like my baseline. But, yeah, unfortunately that might mean... Again, I don't think I'm going to find out the result of the meeting I had earlier today for at least a week, but yeah, depending on how that goes, unfortunately that might... like as if, you know, I live just to stream, but it might eat into my streaming time. It will eat into my streaming time. But you know, got bills to pay in it, bruv. Okay, I'm going to start adding the details. Oh wait, you know what? I didn't actually mean to put that on this sub-layer, I meant to put it on this sub-layer. There we go, because then I can draw my actual details on top. Alright, so, now, the radio my grandmother had a big dial, like I said, a big sort of display for the radio stations. Massive, great big thing, took up most of this part of the radio. And now I'm trying to remember, was it mono? No, it was dual speaker. And I think it had it in a way where they were sort of like this on either end, on like sort of either side. Were they squarish? I think they were more squarish. And then what I might do actually is just have this so it's a little bit higher. Just trying to think how I want to design it. So obviously I've got like a vague idea of it, of what it was like in my head, but then how do I actually want it to look like when I'm drawing it? And I'm just considering whether with this large dial thing, whether I want it to be a bit more curving over the top, like that. Hold on, let's see. So it's like clear plastic, I guess. It'll still have, you know, regardless however I end up drawing it, it will still very much fit into that mid-80s gadget design oeuvre. But yeah, whether I should have it like that, so it sort of slightly curves over the top. Meaning it will also come down the side a little bit. How in the middle have I done speakers? So this could probably go a little bit more like that-ish. I'm just roughing it out at the moment. I will draw this all probably again on top. I'm just trying to nail down the kind of the form of it. Didn't have a radio. This radio absolutely did have a radio, but it didn't have a cassette player. So I'm just trying to remember what it had in the middle. I guess in the middle of this one I could do it like where some of the switches are. So I'm going to have the dial here on the side somewhere, probably close to this bit. But I will have like your AM, FM, you know, switches like that there. If I remember correctly, it also had its logo kind of dead center, this radio my mum's mum had, my grandmother had. I wonder what happened to it actually. No, my grandmother, and it being Poland, I think she had it throughout the 90s. So knowing her in the early 2000s, maybe I think she got a new radio. Probably my uncle got her a new radio or something, a bit more updated. But she would have probably have given it away because there wasn't, especially with her generation, there wasn't really any kind of culture of throwing anything away. And if you didn't need anything anymore, you wouldn't throw it away. You'd give it away. You'd give it to somebody. Because there were still were loads of very needy people, as in, they had nothing. So even an old radio was something. I suppose it's a bit like having a charity shop. You didn't really get charity shops in Poland in those days because the concept of buying second-hand stuff was kind of not a thing, because you wouldn't really ever sell second-hand stuff. You just, like I said, give it away. Give it to a church or give it to a poor family that you knew. I guess it's kind of coming back in a way, isn't it? Especially when you think about like clothes banks and all that sort of stuff. It's all kind of coming back a little bit in a slightly more structured way. I suppose that's the difference, is that in that period in Poland, it wasn't particularly institutional. It was just, well, I guess if you consider the church maybe as an institution, no doubt there would have been, clothing drives for the poor organised by the church and that sort of thing. No doubt. But yeah, my grandmother would have probably given her radio away. She lived in a large house that had been turned into apartments. She was on the ground floor, and on the top floor, because it was sort of like an apartment where the ground floor was the biggest, and then it had like two smaller floors above it. Because like I say, it wasn't a block of flats, it was a big house that had been converted into apartments. Anyway, the top floor was like almost an attic conversion, so it was the smallest flat apartment, and there was a relatively, I'm not going to say really poor family there, but there was a family there that didn't have very much money, and she probably would have given them the radio. She used to give them a lot of hand-me-downs, because my uncle was always giving her new stuff. She often complained. She'd be like, I don't need this old new stuff. I've got a perfectly good working 80s radio. Why do I need a new one? And my uncle would be like, what do you say to that? You'd say, well, nothing lasts forever, and this one sounds better, that kind of thing that my grandmother wouldn't particularly care about. She'd be like, this 80s radio sounds great. What are you talking about? Just very different expectations, She was somebody that had lived through the Polish experience of the Second World War, so what was important to her was, I think, quite different to my uncle, who was obviously is a baby boomer. A Polish baby boomer, admittedly, not like a Western baby boomer, so again, slightly different expectations to baby boomers here in the West, but still not that full on I've lived through the brutality of war kind of life. Hang about. I'm noticing a perspective thing here. Yeah. Here we go. It's nothing massive, it's just down here. It needs to be a bit more like this. In fact, if I grab this line here, this guide line here, and I do a Control V, I knew it. Just needs to be ever so slightly more like this. You have to understand, you must understand that when I start streaming, I'm coming in cold. I don't really have the luxury of like always doing a bit of sometimes I do, but I don't really always have the luxury of doing a bit of warm up before I start drawing. So it's sort of a decision of, do I just hit stream, start drawing, or do I sacrifice some streaming time by doing like a little bit of warm up drawing beforehand, you know? And today it was the former, not the latter. I thought, I don't have forever to stream, so I'm just gonna hit the stream button and then worry about how cat-handed I am at drawing. I feel a bit of guilt saying cat-handed because I remember reading an article not that long ago about how actually it's supposed to be a bit of a derogatory term for people who are differently abled. Is that right? Probably. It's probably some horrible term. Some horrible term. So I should say not cat-handed, but just a bit clumsy and not fully warmed up. There we go, that's better. Alright, cool. Back to my details roughing out. So I think I'm going to have it so that the dial is... Oh, maybe the dial should be more in the middle, actually. There's a great big silver dial. Plastic, but silvery dial, if I remember correctly. Oh man, I really wish I remember what the make was. It'd be really funny to see what it looks like. It was, I think it was West German though. Not West German, pardon me, East German. She might have had the old West German thing, but I believe her radio was most likely West German. It's like, I'm going to make up a brand, Gruns, like G-R-U with an umlaut, N-Z, you know, something like that. With like a sort of very severe looking typeface. I'm not quite sure if this dial is in line with everything else in terms of perspective, but I will rough it out and then adjust accordingly. Does it actually need to be bigger, the dial? I'm trying to remember no, I think that's about right. Before coming onto the stream, I was listening to, or rather watching, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with Anthony Fantano. He's a self-described internet's busiest music nerd. He runs like a channel called The Needle Drop, and he also has another channel, like a secondary channel, I guess you'd call it, called I think just Fantano or Anthony Fantano, whatever. Anyway, I agree with some of his music takes, but not all of them necessarily. But he was just talking about how the Gorillaz, as in Jamie Hewlett and Damon Albarn, were talking in the particular interview about possibly handing over the Gorillaz IP to younger people, you know, sort of passing the buck. Passing the buck? No, passing the buck is when you want to pass the blame. Just passing it on as they get older. As they get older and closer to death. And I think they will probably hand off the art side of it, so Jamie Hewlett's side of the Gorillaz powerhouse, to the Line studio, because it's the Line that have basically done all their music videos over the last decade and a half. No, decade, I'd say. So I reckon it will be the line handling that side of things. And I mean, great. I mean, they're such an amazing studio. One of the best in the UK at this point, in terms of 2D anyway. 2D, that's a character from the Gorillas. Now, sonically, though, as in Damon Albarn's side of the Gorillas. Now that'll be more interesting. I don't know who'll be taking that over. I feel like, you know, the thing about animation is it's always you know, although yes, it's Jamie Hewlett's creation, those characters, the way they look, the aesthetic, all that sort of thing, but it's not it's not actually Jamie Hewlett himself in any of it, whilst obviously the bigger issue is that it's very much Damon Albarn's voice that is a large part, because that is you know, who sings. So that's going to be much harder, more jarring as a replacement, I guess. Who would be like a good Damon Albarn replacement? Because that will frankly be the biggest change, will be the fact that it wouldn't be him singing. Obviously not all Gorillaz tracks have singing. There are a few which or even have Damon Albarn on them, but that I think will be like the biggest thing, the lead singer. Do. You know, I want to redraw this dial. I don't like it. I've done it. I've rushed in. I need to do this properly. Come on. So let's say I don't want it to be dead in the centre, but let's say if that's the centre, a little bit north of the centre, so about there. So, but then it conflicts with that. So actually, no. Let's make it a bit more as it was in the centre. Another thing I'm thinking about voices now, as in Damon Albarn's singing voice being a pretty big part of Gorillaz, right? But one thing I've always been a little bit curious about is doing voice work for animation, because I know a couple of animators who also, due to their connections, I guess, with well, the fact that they're animators, they also do some voice acting. I've always been a little bit curious about voice acting, as in doing it myself, maybe. But then it's quite a personal thing sometimes, I think. What I like about animation is, one, I love to draw. full stop. Drawing is one of the most important things in my life, right? So there's that, but also, you know, if I'm having a bad day, it doesn't, I mean, it does, I guess, affect the way I work a little bit, but I feel like it's just that much more visceral when it comes to using your voice or your image, your own personal image, you know, sort of the whole acting side of it. That feels like a lot of pressure, and boy, I suppose you have to be quite you have to be pretty thick-skinned, I think, sometimes, because people sometimes criticize, you know, the usual thing. If you're an actor, they'll criticize you, your image, the way you look like, as being the problem, as opposed to your choices. Do you know what I mean? Like what you can choose. But I suppose that's the thing with voice acting, especially for animation or audiobooks or whatever. It's a little more detached. You can still hide behind the microphone. And this is my total ignorance, but isn't also voice acting in general much more of a saturated market than, say, even the animation side of things, which is already very saturated in some aspects? No, it needs to be a bit more here, a bit more at the back. How long have I been streaming? 45 minutes. Okay, cool. Needs to be thicker. Just a little bit wider. So if I do I think something a bit more like that, actually. Nope. No thanks, Toon Boom. Yeah, that's the sort of width I'm looking for. I'm going to work on that dial a bit more in a second. Now, if I remember correctly, the speakers, did they touch the bottom? I can't remember. Does it really matter? In my design, they will go down to the bottom. Sure, why not? Down to the bottom. Just check that they're sort of roughly the same width. Kind of. And then, just because I can, I'm going to have the handle of it extended out. So it's, one of these sort of, as it's a portable radio, has one of these sort of handles that stretches along the entire length of the radio. It's just a matter of working out what's like a sensible height off the radio. I want it to be ever so slightly tapered as it goes to the top. But as this is an acute angle, so very acute, it's just a bit more of a subtle taper. Ooh. There we go. Haven't had a visit yet from many of my spam friends. It's a shame. Almost feels like a stream isn't complete without me banning at least one bot selling me views. Oh! I think I accidentally hit the old print screen button there. I seem to be doing that quite a lot recently, where I accidentally hit print screen instead of delete. So then when I hit the paste Control V, it just whacks the whole screenshot I've just ended up taking. There we go. I'll do. So roughly, I mean, again, you won't actually see it, so I don't know if I should bother drawing it on this side. Maybe I will. In case I end up moving it along or something a little bit, should probably draw it. Man, I wish I could play the piano. It's such a cool instrument. So with this dial, looking at it again, I just need to make this a little less round. Not a lot. This feels quite... maybe it is. Is this, what's he called? Tubular Bells guy. Mike Oldfield. This feels a bit Mike Oldfield. If it isn't, it sounds like him. My problem with Mike Oldfield is that I like quite a lot of his 70s and 80s stuff, but man, he's gone like full pub bore, as in moaning old man. Very reactionary old git sort of thing. Geezer. I think they call them geezers in the States, we call them gits in the UK. Yet again proving that just because you're extremely talented in one of the creative fields, music in Mike's case, does not translate to being somebody who has any empathy or compassion. Once upon a time, I equated being creative as being somebody with like a natural ability to empathize, because you have to be sensitive to certain things, I guess. But clearly not. Clearly not an issue. What was I thinking? I guess I was trying to put creatives on a pedestal, as I consider myself one, so I was thinking, we would never do something like that. Obviously, I still listen to quite a lot of Michael's. Well, not a lot of them, but there's certainly a couple of his albums that I really enjoy. I'm able. He's basically, his thing is that he's just an old git, so I can get over that. I can separate the art from the artist in that case. I don't think he's done anything I don't think he's been a reprobate like a lot of people have been. If this isn't Mike Oldfield, who is this? Does anybody know? Ooh, lovely bit of choral. Very nice. What is it about this that I'm not liking? Is that more like it? Yeah, that's fine. I mean, maybe just a bit more like that. There we go. That's good enough. Good enough. And then you won't really see it, but something like that in the middle. There we go. Alright, that'll do for the dial, I think. I'll probably end up drawing it 500 times again. Hopefully not. If I remember correctly, then it had like a... It's kind of easy to remember the details on a dial because it was the bit you interacted with the most when tuning into a radio station. So I believe it had like a band without a grippy bit, and then this bit was sort of textured in a way so that you could turn the dial easily. Twist that knob. Yeah, I thought that might be the case. I need to change this perspective. Well, not perspective so much as if that's like that, then this needs to be more like... What's the difference? Okay. Oh my goodness. Not quarter past, 1 hour, 15 minutes almost already. Crikey. Time really does fly when I'm drawing. Yeah, there we go. That's more in line with that. So actually I want this to be square. Go. Does that mean I need to tweak these lines a little bit? Or does that kind of work? Let's have a look. Maybe a little bit of tweaking. Not too much though, just a touch. Hey, got my first bot. Thank you. Thank you for providing. I'm going to... Oh goodness, this one's got a bit of a fruity name. This bot is called Topless Suspect. Okay. L and then the rest is just basically gibberish. Ban. Go put a top on. That told them. Can't be topless on Twitch, can you? Actually, I don't know what are the terms of services when it comes to toplessness. I imagine the rules might be different between people who have breasticles and people who don't. Yes, I did just call them breasticles. Clearly I am Alan Partridge. Perfect. Amazing. Yep. Let's check my messages. What have I got? I got some kind of message here. Oh no, it's just some spam emails. Thank you. Getting hit by spam from all angles. All right. I think that seems about right, doesn't it? Yes, I think I can live with that. So, what did I say? I said I was going to maybe have... It definitely had like a couple of knobs. Dials, knobs. Technically they're called potentiometers. Should stop doing that, shouldn't I? Just the sort of thing, potentiometers. Definitely had a couple of those on the top, but it also had a couple of switches, I think, on the front as well, underneath the logo between the two speakers, because like I said, this was not a cassette deck, it was purely a dual speaker portable radio that my grandmother had. So I'm going to incorporate two switches here. And they were kind of, well, in this case anyway, the way I'm drawing them, they'll be the two kind of lever, rebel, type ones, which were quite popular in 80s devices from what I remember. And then I'll do a couple of potentiometer style ones up here. Trying to think what side would be most likely for them to be. Probably here. You know, I think this might need to be just a little bit more like this. Okay, so I'll put a couple of potentiometer type things up here. I almost feel like, you know what, I'm going to tweak this top line as well a little bit. Just a little tweak. Oh, I've done it on the wrong layer. This is meant to go on my guide layer, which is this one. There we go. Yeah, cool, awesome. Let's do those potentiometers. I'll do a couple. Who knows what they're for? Volume and bass versus treble. That's the kind of portable radio this is. It has that level of functionality. I think they used to refer to that as tone, when it would be a simple equalizer that would basically you either turn up the treble or you turn up the bass. Mm-hmm. if you're in the UK, by the way, don't forget that this weekend, Sunday, is Mother's Day. So, just saying, if it's relevant to you, don't forget. It's quite funny how, yes, it's so funny. It's interesting that Father's Day, I believe, is pretty much the same date no matter where you are in the world. Mother's Day, on the other hand, has quite a few regional variations, and I think I read somewhere it's because Father's Day was kind of like more of an officially set, predetermined celebration, whilst Mother's Days are a bit more kind of, the various Mother's Day days are more to do with regional, like either religious or customs, as opposed to like a big international decision. I think, don't quote me on that, I feel now the minute I've said that I'm completely wrong. But how else can you explain the fact that there are so many variations? You know? This feels a bit Steely Dan-ish, doesn't it? some of these details I will probably end up taking out when I'm in the colouring stage because they will look a bit too busy, but I'm putting them in for the line work phase. There we go. I think my neighbours have just got back home and I've got a couple of their Amazon packages here. So I think within the next 10 to 15 minutes, maybe even sooner, I'm going to get a ding dong. And it's going to be my neighbour and he's going to say, I think you've got some packages for me. And I will have them in hand already. And I will say, yes, I have them in my hands already. And then they'll say, oh, well, that's really kind of you, thank you. And I will say, no problem. No, it won't go anything like that. They will say, I think you've got some, and then I'll just literally, without saying anything, hand them over. And they'll go like, oh, thanks. And then that'll be it. That'll be the end of the interaction. Nice, awkward, no pleasantries exchanged. It's because we get their packages all the time because I think we are... I don't use Amazon very much. In fact, I think I maybe use Amazon once a week. Once a week? No, I mean once a year. I mean I very rarely use Amazon. Caveat, I know that Twitch is owned by Amazon. But they use Amazon a lot. And I believe current Amazon policy is you can set your like safe delivery place. And I think without doubt, even so they never consulted us, we are their safe delivery place, which is fine. It's fine. Occasionally we get one of their packages, who cares? All I'm saying is I'm expecting to get a knock on the door for this possible exchange. Oh my god, why can't I... oh my god, it's still not quite as low as the other one. What was going on? You know what? Mirror. That'll make my life easier, won't it? Okay, so... Oh, I just realised it's not quite in the centre. maybe that should be roughly it. I realise I could probably just copy and paste this one here, but the thing is I don't want to, I want it to all look a little bit more hand-drawn than that. I will only copy and paste as a last resort. But if I can have it all individually drawn, I will. Oh, okay. We're actually on another mix. Makes sense. Oh, we're well into the second mix. What's another detail to add? So, done the speakers. I'm going to have them a bit like this. No, thinner. Think if I do that like that, do I like that way of doing it? No, I don't. I'm going to think about that a bit more in a sec. Come on, keep up. I know that you won't see this particular bit of the handle, but I'm just doing that in order to sort of gauge the way it might look. Fully erect switch. Doesn't need to be quite as long as this. Is this like a dub version? Just an instrumental version? Sorry, YouTube. Maybe it's just like the 12-inch mix or something, because that was quite a long intro in. I don't know how the album version goes, but that was a long intro. Decided against the speakers going right to the bottom of the radio. Oh, I think my computer's about to take off. Oh, there we go. feel like we could definitely add a couple more details onto this. Just trying to work out where to put them. Well, obviously I'm going to put the FM radio details here. So what I could do is give the impression of clear plastic. That might be my neighbour I was speaking about. Bear with me. Be right